Hi there, my name is Alistair. I'm a student nurse here at Marquette University. I want to speak with you a little bit about some contraceptive options that you have. In particular, I want to talk with you about fertility awareness based methods, also known as natural family planning. I believe that these would be good choices for you for a number of different reasons, including that one, you are married in a monogamous relationship with a single partner, both of which have been tested for sexually transmitted infections. And secondly, you did state earlier that you're practicing Roman Catholic, and this is actually the only birth control method that is approved by the Roman Catholic Church. So in practicing it, you will still be abiding by your faith and beliefs. Um, Natural family planning methods are predicated on the fact that there's a fertile period of approximately 5 to 7 days in which a female is able um, to be impregnated. It includes several days prior to ovulation, the time during ovulation, and approximately one day after ovulation. It's a window, like I said, where you are able to get impregnated during that time. Ovulation is when an egg is released from the ovaries into the fallopian tubes, which is the area where the egg can be fertilized. So I am going to teach you two different methods of family planning. The reason being that it's important to use two separate ones because it allows that they're used best if they're used conjointly. So the first one that I'm going to speak with you about is known as the basal body temperature method. And that is predicated on the fact that throughout a woman's menstrual cycle, her basal body temperature fluctuates, which can cue us in to what stage or phase throughout the cycle the body is in. So the basal body temperature is the lowest body temperature of the day, and that occurs first thing in the morning prior to getting out of bed. So in order to do this every morning prior to getting out of bed, you're gonna take your basal body temperature. You can use normal glass and mercury thermometer, but it's at risk of being broken, or you can use a digital thermometer. The new ones have functions where you can record a history so that you can go back and take a look at it. Um, like I said, you're going to take your temperature first thing in the morning before getting out of bed, and you're going to want to track the temperature changes. So during menses or your period, and approximately 5 to 7 days afterwards, you're going to get essentially a baseline temperature. In some women, just prior to ovulation, that temperature will drop by about approximately zero point 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit. Not in all women, but in some. After ovulation, the basal body temperature will increase by 0.72 to 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit due to an increase in hormone levels that occurs when the egg is released from the ovaries, like we talked about earlier. Um, that elevated temperature will remain until approximately 2 to 4 days prior to menses or your next period, at which point it will drop down. If that temperature remains elevated, that's an indicator to us that you may be pregnant. So I know it's a little difficult to kind of comprehend everything just by me telling you. So I do have a graph here to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to put this down here so you can get a better look. So as I mentioned, when we take a look right here, during menses and the 5 to 7 days afterward, you have essentially a baseline temperature. In some women, you have that slight drop that occurs just prior to ovulation. Post ovulation, your temperature is going to increase and it's going to remain elevated for until 2 to 4 days prior to menses, at which point it would drop back down to that baseline level, unless, of course, you may be pregnant. So it's going to be really important when you do take your basal body temperature to try to graph it out, like I just showed you, because it will give you a good opportunity to visually see at which stage your body is in. Now, you may be asking, when is the fertile period? During which temperatures am I able to get pregnant? Well, the first day of that fertile period begins during the first day of either temperature drop or elevation. As I mentioned, some women have that temperature drop prior to ovulation, some don't. So if you do have the temperature drop, that would be the start of the fertile period. If you don't and it just elevates, that would be the start of the fertile period. The fertile period then ends after 3 consecutive days of temperature elevation, as long as that temperature elevation is at least 0.8 degrees Fahrenheit. So begins on the first day of either drop or elevation, and then ends after 3 consecutive days of elevation. Some things to keep in mind is that basal body temperature can be affected by a number of different things, including infection, fatigue, alcohol consumed the evening before, getting less than 3 hours of sleep per night, awakening late in the day, anxiety, any jet lag, and perhaps sleeping on a heated waterbed. And because of the fact that the basal body temperature can be changed by, a number of different variables, it's best to use this in coordination with another method, such as the calendar method, which I'm going to move into right now. So the calendar method is, in order to do that, you're going to count your first day of menses over 6 months. In doing so, it's going to give you an idea of how long your menstrual cycles are over those 4 months. Over those 6 months. The start of the fertile period is going to be marked by subtracting 18 days from your shortest cycle, and the end of the fertile period is going to be calculated by subtracting 11 days from your longest cycle. So if your shortest menstrual cycle is 28 days, you'll subtract 18 from that, and you'll get the 10th day being the start of the fertile period. And if your longest cycle was 30 days, you'll subtract 11 from that and get 19 being the end of the fertile cycle. So between those 2 days will be your fertile period. Obviously, if you're trying to avoid having children, you're going to avoid sexual intercourse during that time. If you're trying to have children, you're going to want to make sure to try to get the egg fertilized in between those 2 dates. With any form of contraception, there are advantages and disadvantages. Some disadvantages to the natural family planning method is that it does restrict sex spontaneity. The reason being that if you are trying to avoid having children in between that fertile period, you will not be able to have intercourse, especially because your faith prohibits you from using any other sort of barrier contraceptives or spermicides or hormonal contraceptives. Another disadvantage is it is kind of a rigorous method to have to write down and keep track of the different basal body temperatures and count out your menses dates. So that is another disadvantage. And then another disadvantage is that there is unfortunately an increased risk of pregnancy using natural family planning methods. The reason why is because in using these, it doesn't prevent ovulation. And while there are some physiological changes like in body temperature that occur that can cue us into when you are ovulating and not, it's not guaranteed because menstrual cycles can be irregular and they could change from month to month. And as I mentioned, that basal body temperature can change based on a number of different factors. So the fail rate in the first year of using natural family planning methods is approximately 24%. However, there are some advantages to using the natural family planning method. For one, you have better awareness and knowledge of your body and of fertility. So if and when you and your husband decide that you do want to have kids, you'll have a good idea of when that fertile period is so that you can try to conceive within that window. Another advantage is it's relatively free or low cost. All you need for the basal body temperature is a thermometer and pen and paper to write it down to keep track and graph your temperatures. And then for the calendar method, you just need pen and paper to calculate your fertile periods. Another advantage is a complete absence of chemicals. So almost all other contraceptives either have hormones or chemicals that are involved with it. This has none. And then the biggest advantage is there's increased involvement and intimacy with your partner. In order to do natural family planning successfully, you'll have to have buy-in from your partner and have to be an active participant in your contraceptive measures. And so because of that, it will create that greater involvement and intimacy with your partner. As I mentioned, both of these work best when they're used conjointly or hand in hand. You'll want to make sure that the windows fall within each other. So you want your basal body temperature fertile window and your calendar method fertile period to fall within each other. And then for the best results, you'll want to use the wider of the two dates. I know I gave you a lot of information, so I'm going to be sure to send you home with pamphlets to jog your memory if you have any questions going forward. Please feel free to always call us back. But like I said, I think this would probably be the best method of contraceptive for you because you are in a monogamous relationship and it also conforms with your Roman Catholic beliefs, and you won't have to give up any of your faith in order to practice these. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.